You ever notice how fear shows up the moment you're about to step into something bigger? It sneaks in, grabs your breath, tightens your chest, and convinces you that you're not ready. But what if I told you that fear isn't stronger than you, it's just faster? And anxiety, it's nothing more than a pattern you've rehearsed without realizing it. Today I'm going to show you how to break that pattern in seconds. Not someday, not eventually, right now. You'll learn the quickest, simplest way to shut down fear and anxiety for good, so you can finally step into the life that's waiting for you. Fear isn't the enemy most people think it is. In fact, most of the fear you feel isn't even real. It's a pattern, a conditioned response, an automatic signal your brain fires because somewhere along the way it decided that uncertainty equals danger. But here's the truth. Fear is not a wall. Fear is not a stop sign. Fear is not a verdict on your future. Fear is a signal. And any signal can be interrupted, redirected, or completely rewired the moment you take control of it. Most people never learn this. They grow up thinking fear is this massive force they have to push against. They believe anxiety is some unshakable shadow that follows them everywhere. They think that if they feel fear, it's a sign they should back away. But the only reason fear feels so loud is because people keep giving it the microphone. They listen to every thought, every story, every what, if their mind throws at them, and they believe it. They let those thoughts dominate their body, their breath, their decisions. And the moment you give fear authority, it expands, it multiplies, it recruits anxiety and worry to join the party. Suddenly, the mind isn't just sending a signal, it's sending a full symphony of panic. But the moment you interrupt the signal, everything changes. Think about this. The mind only works with the meaning you give it. If you see fear as a warning that something terrible is coming, your body prepares to run or hide. If you instead see fear as a message that something big is on the other side, something meaningful, something that matters, then the entire emotional experience flips. It goes from I'm in danger to I'm being called forward. And the fastest way to shut down fear and anxiety is to take control of meaning before your mind invents one for you. When fear shows up, it's not saying you can't, it's saying you're about to step into something unfamiliar. That's all. The brain doesn't care about your greatness. It doesn't care about your growth, your impact, your dreams. It only cares about survival. And survival is not the standard you were born for. You were built for progress, contribution, expansion, and every part of that requires stepping into the unknown. So fear fires not because you're weak, but because you're growing. If you weren't growing, you'd feel nothing. People assume that fear means stop, but fear often means go. It means you're on the edge of something that matters. It means you're stepping into a higher version of yourself, one your brain hasn't calibrated for yet. And if you can take that moment, the moment fear rises, and intercept the signal, you instantly regain control. Here's what most people don't realize. Fear has no real power on its own. It only has the power of your attention. Your attention is your fuel. Wherever your focus goes, your energy follows. If you put your focus on fear, it grows. If you put your focus on strength, courage, and possibility, fear shrinks. It dissolves. It becomes background noise, but that only happens when you stop letting fear lead. You must take back the steering wheel. So let's break this down in the simplest way. When fear shows up, the first thing you must do is notice it, not judge it, not panic, not shame yourself for feeling it. Just notice it. Okay, there's the signal. This simple moment of awareness gives you the space to choose your response instead of reacting on autopilot. Then you interrupt it because fear is like a loop, a repetitive pattern, and loops only break when you disrupt them. You can disrupt it with your breath, with your physiology, with a question, with movement. Anything that shifts your state. The moment you do that, fear loses its grip because it no longer has a predictable path to follow. Next, you redirect the meaning. Instead of letting the mind default to I'm not safe, you consciously choose a meaning that empowers you. This fear is simply energy. This fear means I'm expanding. This fear means I'm about to grow. When you shift the meaning, the emotion transforms instantly. Some people say, but it feels so intense. It feels overwhelming. And that's because they never created distance between themselves and the feeling. They collapse their identity into the emotion. They say, I am anxious instead of I feel anxious. The moment you remove the I am, you remove fear's ability to define you. You are not fear. You are the one experiencing it. And the one who experiences something is always greater than the experience itself. Fear only wins when you forget who you are. You've survived every difficult moment in your life. You've pushed through challenges you thought would break you. You've risen after setbacks that would have kept someone else on the ground. You've walked through things your past self thought were impossible. And now your mind wants you to believe that a thought, a worry, a story can defeat you. Not a chance. The moment you remember your strength, fear becomes small, but you have to claim that strength by choosing how you interpret the fear. You must train yourself to see fear as information, not intimidation. When the brain fires that signal, hey, we're stepping outside the familiar, instead of shrinking, you lean in, because that signal is not a warning of danger. It's an invitation to rise. And when you rise, fear no longer leads. You lead. Once fear becomes a signal instead of a stop sign, you stop obeying it. You start using it. You start seeing it as a guide, a GPS, recalculating your route toward growth. And in that moment, fear becomes what it was always meant to be, a messenger, nothing more. And the instant you control the message, you control your life. That's why shutting down fear and anxiety isn't about fighting harder. It's about understanding the signal, interrupting it, and replacing it with a meaning that strengthens you instead of shrinking you. The moment you do that, fear collapses, anxiety dissolves, and you step into the version of yourself that fear was trying to protect you from, the stronger, braver, more powerful version of you. This is the moment you stop letting fear speak louder than your future. Your body is the fastest doorway out of fear. Most people try to shut down anxiety by thinking their way out of it, but you can't outthink a survival instinct. You can't negotiate with a panic signal while your physiology is still in a defensive state. The mind follows the body, and the moment you change your body, you change your emotional reality. It's immediate, it's primal, it's built into your wiring, yet almost no one uses it. They sit still, they freeze, they tighten their breath, they collapse inward, and then they wonder why anxiety grows louder. Your body becomes the amplifier for the fear you feel. But what happens when you flip that? What happens when instead of collapsing, you expand? What happens when you stand tall, breathe deeper, put energy into your movement, shift your posture, shift your expression, even for 10 seconds? You break the pattern instantly, because fear cannot survive in a body that signals strength. Anxiety cannot dominate a system that's fully oxygenated, fully engaged, and fully alive. The emotional state you experience is a reflection of the physical state you're in. Think about the last time you were truly confident. Were you breathing shallow? Were your shoulders hunched? Was your face tight? Your body still? Your energy low? Of course not. Confidence has a posture, power has a rhythm, certainty has a breath pattern, courage has a way of moving. If you copy the physiology of fear, you feel fear. If you copy the physiology of power, you feel powerful. It's that simple and that immediate. The problem is most people are unconscious about their physiology. They don't realize how much their body is contributing to the anxiety they're experiencing. Their breath is fast and shallow, tricking the brain into thinking something is wrong. Their shoulders are caved in, telling the nervous system to stay small. Their muscles are tight, sending a signal that danger is close. Their posture is collapsed, shutting down their energy. And their mind reads all of these physical cues like an emergency broadcast. Your body speaks first. Your thoughts follow. When you understand that, you regain control. You stop trying to manage fear with logic and you start interrupting it with physiology, because the body reacts faster than the mind can think. You shift your breath before you shift your thoughts. You shift your movement before you shift your meaning. And when you take command of your body, the mind recalibrates. Let's talk about breath for a moment. Fear speeds up your breathing, so you slow it down. Anxiety makes your breath shallow, so you deepen it. Panic tightens the chest, so you expand it. When you breathe in a way that tells the body you are safe, the brain has no choice but to follow. 3 slow, controlled breaths can do more to transform your emotional state than 3 hours of talking yourself out of worry, because oxygen regulates emotion. Breath regulates focus. Breath regulates the nervous system. Breath is the remote control to your inner state, and most people never even pick it up. Then there's movement. Movement is magic. Movement is the fastest emotional reset you have. You stand up quickly, you shake out your arms, you roll your shoulders back, you jump, stretch, walk fast, change your environment, change your pace. Anything that shocks the pattern interrupts the anxiety loop. Your brain is wired to respond to movement. In the wild, movement meant life, movement meant power, movement meant capability. So when you move with energy, your brain goes, we can handle this. You're not frozen, you're not helpless, you're not in danger, you're in motion. And motion destroys fear. Even a simple posture change, lifting your chest, relaxing your jaw, standing tall, sends a signal that shifts your chemistry. Your hormones change. Your nervous system changes. Your mind's interpretation changes. People underestimate how quickly a physiological shift can ripple through their entire emotional state. They think it has to be complicated. They think it requires a deep psychological breakthrough. But the truth is, in the moments when fear is loudest, the simplest tools are the ones that save you. You can't wait until you feel ready to change your state. You change your state first, and readiness follows. Fear shows up. You change your breath. You move your body. You break the loop. You reclaim control. This is why you can be terrified in one moment and laughing in the next when something interrupts your pattern. It's why someone can be panicking, and then suddenly, when the right stimulus hits, a sound, a shift, a moment of surprise, the emotional storm breaks instantly. It's not that the fear disappears magically, it's that the physiology that was feeding it gets interrupted, and once the physiology breaks, the emotion has nothing left to hold on to. Once you understand this, you start using your body like a tool instead of a hostage. You don't let anxiety dictate how you stand, how you breathe, how you move. You flip the equation. You move first, and anxiety has to adapt to you, not the other way around. Picture someone paralyzed by fear, shoulders low, chest tight, breathing thin, eyes darting, energy frozen. Now picture the same person taking a breath, lifting their chest, planting their feet, rolling back their shoulders, loosening their jaw, lifting their chin, stepping forward with purpose. Is it the same person emotionally? No, the fear didn't change, the physiology did, and the physiology changed the emotion. This is why athletes shake their arms before a big moment, why speakers jump backstage, why performers stretch and breathe deeply before stepping into the light. They're not waiting to, feel powerful. They're generating power. They're building a state that gives them access to the part of themselves that performs at the highest level. You can do the same every time fear hits you. You don't shrink, you expand, you don't freeze, you move, you don't tighten, you loosen, you don't collapse, you rise, you teach your body to be the signal of safety, strength, and certainty, and your mind aligns with it. The brain simply cannot maintain a fear response in a body that signals confidence. And if you do this consistently, you create a new default, a new baseline, a new identity of how you show up emotionally. Fear stops feeling like a wave that crashes over you. Anxiety stops feeling like a storm you're helpless against. It becomes something you know how to regulate, redirect, and shut down at will. Because when you control your body, you control your state. And when you control your state, you control your life. This is the moment you choose power over panic. Your mind is always asking questions, every moment of every day. And most of the time, you don't even hear them. They run quietly in the background, shaping your emotions, driving your decisions, controlling your reactions. Anxiety isn't random. Fear doesn't just appear out of thin air. They're fed, they're fueled, they're activated by the questions your mind keeps looping without your permission. And if you don't take control of those questions, they'll take control of you. Think about this. Every emotion you've ever felt, every moment you've ever spiraled into fear or worry or panic started with a question, maybe not out loud, maybe not consciously, but somewhere in your mind, a question fired. What if this goes wrong? What if I'm not enough? What if they don't like me? What if I fail? What if something bad happens? And the moment that question landed, your body followed. Your breath shifted. Your chest tightened. Your stomach turned. Your energy dropped. One bad question can create an entire emotional storm. And here's the truth. Most people never hear it. Your mind will always answer the question you give it. If you ask a fear-based question, your mind will give you a fear-based answer. Ask a powerless question, get a powerless state. Ask a question rooted in doubt, your brain will flood you with evidence of everything you should worry about. Because your mind is designed to comply with whatever direction you give it. It doesn't care if the question helps you or destroys you, it just follows the command. That's why anxiety often feels like something happening to you, but it's not. It's happening through you, triggered by the questions you haven't learned to intercept yet. Once you understand this, you stop trying to control fear. You start changing the conversation. When worry shows up, you don't try to suppress it. You don't try to fight it. You break it by asking a different question. A question that shifts your focus, shifts your physiology, shifts your emotional state. Because the moment your focus changes, the emotion behind it collapses. For example, if the mind says, what if I fail? You don't argue with it. You replace it with, what's the best that can happen if I try? If your mind says, what if something goes wrong? You redirect with, what can I control right now that moves me forward? If your mind throws, why am I so anxious? You shift to, what action can I take that makes me stronger in this moment? Suddenly your nervous system gets a new instruction, a new target, a new direction. Most people spend their whole lives reacting to their thoughts instead of leading them. They don't realize they have the power to interrupt the very question that generates the fear. They think the problem is the fear itself. But the real problem is the question underneath the fear. You take control of the question, you take control of the feeling. The mind is like a search engine. Type in something negative, and it will give you endless results of everything that supports that negativity. Why am I always messing up? We'll give you a catalog of every mistake you've ever made. Why does nothing ever work out for me? We'll highlight every setback and ignore every victory. But if you type in, what can I learn from this? Or how can I make this situation work for me? Or what strength is this moment calling out of me? You get a completely different set of answers. You didn't change the situation, you changed the question. And the question changed your emotional reality. This is how you break the thought loop that anxiety depends on. Fear needs repetition. It needs a mental treadmill where the same question plays over and over again. It needs a cycle. But cycles only work when they're uninterrupted. The moment you step in and redirect the question, the whole pattern collapses. The emotional charge weakens. The spiral stops spinning. You're no longer feeding the fear, you're starving it. People often ask, how do I stop thinking negative thoughts? You don't stop thoughts. You overwhelm them with better ones. You override them with questions that pull your mind into a different lane. You don't fight the old pattern. You replace it with a stronger one. Ask a better question. You get a better focus. Better focus gives you a better meaning. Better meaning creates a better emotion. Better emotion drives better action, and better action creates a better result. It all starts with the question. But let's be honest. When fear hits hard, you don't always feel like asking a powerful question. Your mind might feel chaotic, overwhelmed, tight. That's normal, which is why you keep the question simple, direct, easy to reach for, even in the middle of stress. Something like, what's one thing I can do right now to break this pattern? What truth am I ignoring because fear is talking? What am I proud of that proves I can handle this? What's actually in my control at this moment? What would the strongest version of me focus on right now? Even if you don't feel strong when you ask it, the question pulls strength out of you. It forces your brain to search for answers that empower instead of weaken you. It interrupts fear and shifts you into the driver's seat. Your brain is a powerful servant, but a terrible master. If you let it run wild, it will always default to protection. It will always assume the worst. That's survival wiring. But you're not here to survive. You're here to expand, grow, elevate. And expansion requires you to lead your mind, not follow it. When fear shows up, instead of asking, what's wrong with me? You ask, what is this moment trying to teach me? When anxiety whispers, you're not safe, you ask, what evidence do I have that I'm actually okay? When doubt says, you can't handle this, you ask, where in my life have I already handled things 10 times harder than this? Suddenly, the fear story stops making sense. The anxiety loses its logic. The emotion loses its fuel, because fear can't dominate a mind that keeps directing itself towards strength. You were never powerless. You were simply asking powerless questions. And now you get to ask better ones. The ones that pull you forward, the ones that lift you higher, the ones that break the fear loop every time it tries to start. Because in the end, your future is shaped not by the thoughts you fear, but by the questions you choose. This is the moment you take back the conversation in your mind. Most people spend their entire lives letting their feelings tell them who they are. They wake up anxious, and suddenly they believe they're an anxious person. They feel fear and tell themselves they must be weak. They experience doubt and conclude they're not capable, not ready, not built for more. They treat temporary emotions like permanent identities, and that single mistake becomes the chain that keeps them stuck. But here's the truth. You are not your emotions. You are not your fear. You are not your anxiety. You are the one who experiences those emotions, which means you are already bigger than them. The moment you separate who you are from what you feel, you reclaim your identity, and identity is the ultimate force in human behavior. You will always act in alignment with who you believe you are, even if that belief is outdated, destructive, or built on someone else's opinion. If you believe you're someone who panics easily, you'll panic. If you believe you're someone who breaks under pressure, you'll break. If you see yourself as fragile, life will constantly feel dangerous. But when you shift your identity, when you see yourself as strong, capable, grounded, resilient, your emotions start to follow that version of you. Fear becomes a message, not a mandate. Anxiety becomes a moment, not a definition. Doubt becomes a whisper, not a prison. What most people never learn is that identity doesn't come from emotion. It comes from decisions. Every time you choose courage over fear, every time you choose to take a step even when you feel anxious, every time you choose to break the pattern instead of surrendering to it, you reinforce a new identity. You tell your nervous system, this is who I am now. You teach your brain a different story. You build evidence for a stronger version of you. You've already done this 1,000 times in your life. Think about moments where you acted with strength you didn't even know you had, times where you pushed forward. Even when you were terrified, times where you stood up for yourself, protected someone you loved, stepped into uncertainty, survived heartbreak, rebuilt after loss, kept going when everything in you wanted to stop. Those moments weren't accidents. They were glimpses of who you truly are beneath the noise. But here's what happens. When anxiety shows up, when fear kicks in, most people forget those moments. They forget the battles they've already won. They forget the strength they've built, the storms they've walked through, the resilience they've proven. Instead, they zoom in on the emotion of the moment and let that emotion narrate their identity. They let fear rewrite their story. But fear doesn't get to define you. You do when you anchor yourself to a strong identity, an identity built on truth, on evidence, on experience. Fear collapses. It loses its power because it no longer has anything to latch onto. Anxiety hits, but it hits the surface instead of sinking into your core. Doubt shows up, but it doesn't change your direction because you know who you are. And that identity is stronger than any temporary feeling. Identity is the anchor in the storm. Let's break this down in the simplest way possible. Emotions are temporary. Identity is foundational. Emotions move. Identity stands. When your emotions feel overwhelming, it's usually because your identity is unanchored. You haven't decided who you are in the face of fear. You haven't declared who you're going to be when anxiety rises. You haven't built a standard that your emotions must rise to meet. The moment you define your identity, your behavior shifts automatically. You can say to yourself, I'm someone who shows up even when I feel fear. I'm someone who moves through anxiety instead of shrinking from it. I'm someone who handles pressure with strength. I'm someone who doesn't let emotions control all my decisions. I'm someone who rises, not someone who retreats. Say that enough, act on it enough, and it becomes the truth your nervous system operates from. But identity isn't just words. It's the way you carry yourself. It's the way you breathe. It's the way you walk into a room. It's the way you continue, even when your emotions scream for you to stop. Every time you choose to act stronger than you feel, you are rewiring your identity. And once that identity becomes solid, fear becomes just another sensation passing through your system, not a definition of your character. Look at it this way. Emotions are like weather. They come and go, but identity is the climate. It's the long-term pattern. It determines how you operate no matter what shows up. When you let fear define you, you're letting a passing storm dictate your entire world. When you define yourself, the storm passes and you remain solid, grounded, unshaken. Here's the powerful part. When you anchor yourself to identity, the whole dynamic flips. Instead of reacting to fear, you respond with intention. Instead of getting lost in anxious thoughts, you remind yourself, this is not who I am. This is just what I'm feeling. And the moment you give your mind that separation, you interrupt the emotional spiral. You create space. You reconnect to your strength. Because when fear hits you, you don't shrink. You stand taller. When anxiety whispers, you don't listen. You breathe deeper. When doubt tries to pull you under, you rise above it. Not because the emotion is gone, but because your identity refuses to bend. And the more you practice this, the more your brain learns that your emotions are not the truth. You stop seeing yourself as someone being chased by fear and start seeing yourself as someone who can walk through fear. You stop thinking anxiety controls you and start realizing you. Control your response. You stop identifying with the feeling and start identifying with the strength inside you. And that shift is what transforms your entire experience of life. This isn't about pretending you don't feel fear. It's about refusing to let fear become your identity. It's about standing in the truth of who you are, even when your emotions try to convince you otherwise. It's about remembering that the strongest version of you has always been there, even in your weakest moments. And that version of you is the one that leads from this moment forward. This is the moment you reclaim who you really are. Most people think fear is a barrier. They think it's this dark, heavy force that shuts them down, holds them back, keeps them small. But the truth is, fear is just energy. Anxiety is just intensity with no direction. It's fuel that hasn't been assigned a purpose yet. The same energy that makes your chest tighten is the energy that can make you move forward with power. The same adrenaline that makes your hands shake is the adrenaline that can make you unstoppable. The difference isn't in the emotion, it's in what you do with it. Fear shows up because something matters. Anxiety rises because your brain senses significance. It's not a sign that you're weak. It's a sign that there's something on the line, something you care about, something that pulls on the deepest part of you. And the moment you stop trying to push that feeling away and start redirecting it, everything shifts. Most people run from fear because they think the emotion means stop. But in reality, fear often means go. Fear means you're near the edge of something meaningful, something that could change your life, something that expands you beyond who you were yesterday. If fear didn't show up, it would mean the moment doesn't matter. Fear is simply intensity without leadership. When you step in and lead that intensity, you turn pressure into power. Think about the moments in your life when you felt the most alive. stepping into something new, taking a risk, speaking up, performing, telling someone how you feel, going after a dream, walking into uncertainty with your heart racing. That's fear and excitement sharing the same doorway. They're twins. They use the same chemistry. The only difference is the meaning you give the feeling. If you call it fear, it traps you. If you call it energy, it frees you. If you call it danger, you shrink. If you call it opportunity, you rise. Your brain doesn't choose the meaning. You do. When you start to reframe fear as fuel, you stop seeing it as a problem and start seeing it as power you haven't tapped into yet. That moment when your stomach drops, that's energy rising. That moment when your breath changes, that's your system preparing for action. That moment when your thoughts speed up, that's your brain searching for direction. Fear isn't shutting you down, it's trying to prepare you. It's waiting for you to assign it a mission. But here's where most people get stuck. They aim all that energy inward. They turn it into overthinking, into worry, into self-doubt, into imagining everything that could go wrong. They don't move, so the energy has nowhere to go. And energy with no outlet becomes anxiety. It becomes pressure without direction. It becomes a storm that builds inside you because it was meant to move through you. But the moment you take action, any action, that energy transforms. The moment you redirect that fear into movement, into strategy, into courage, into expression, it becomes momentum. Fear wants to move. Use it. Think about a rocket on the launch pad. All that pressure building inside, that's what lifts it. That's what pushes it beyond gravity. The same pressure that could blow the rocket apart. T is the pressure that sends it into the sky. The difference is direction. The difference is intention. The difference is leadership. You are the rocket. Fear is the fuel. Use it to rise. When fear hits you and you say, this is energy, this is power, this is intensity I can redirect, your whole state changes. You stop resisting, you stop tightening, you stop letting the emotion overload your system. Instead, you expand into it. You breathe it in, you turn toward it. You ask the question that flips the entire emotional experience. How can I use this? That one question snaps you out of paralysis and into purpose. If you're afraid of speaking, that fear becomes passion. If you're afraid of failing, that fear becomes focus. If you're afraid of rejection, that fear becomes courage. If you're afraid of uncertainty, that fear becomes hunger. If you're afraid of stepping forward, that fear becomes the very push you need. Fear is raw energy. Anxiety is untamed power. When you direct it, you become unstoppable. And it's not about pretending you're not afraid. It's about using the fear instead of letting it use you. It's about turning the emotion into motion, because nothing kills fear faster than forward movement. Fear can't survive when you're in action. Anxiety can't dominate when your body and mind are engaged in something meaningful. You've had moments where this instinct kicked in without you realizing it. Moments where you were scared, but you acted anyway. And afterward, the fear dissolved, replaced by pride, strength, clarity. It wasn't because the fear vanished magically. It's because action converted it. The pressure turned into power. You've done it before. You can do it every time. But you must stop believing that fear is a stop sign. Fear is a green light. Fear is the signal that something meaningful is ahead. Fear is the doorway to expansion. Everything you want, growth, confidence, success, connection, fulfillment, sits on the other side of fear. Instead of saying, I'm scared, start saying, I'm activated. Instead of saying, I feel anxious, start saying, my energy is rising. Instead of saying, this is just too much, start saying, this is my breakthrough moment. The emotion doesn't change instantly. Your relationship to it does. And once your relationship to fear changes, the fear loses its authority. You take back the driver's seat. You reclaim every part of your power your emotions used to hijack. Your future expands every time you walk toward what scares you, every time. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to use fear as fuel. It's turning uncertainty into fire. It's turning doubt into drive. It's turning pressure into power. This is the moment you turn fear into your engine. When you decide to master your emotional state every single day, you stop living life by accident and start living life by intention. Most people wake up and instantly surrender their power. They grab their phone, check messages, check problems, check notifications, and before they've taken their first conscious breath, they're already reacting. Anxiety shows up because the mind's been conditioned to anticipate chaos before possibility. But the truth is, you can train your mind and body to meet the day from a place of strength instead of fear. And the simplest way to do that is by building a daily state ritual. Not something complicated, not something that takes hours, but something that aligns your body, your breath, and your focus with who you want to be, not what you're afraid of. You can think of it like a reset switch for your nervous system. Every morning you set the tone. Every morning you decide what state you're going to live in. And that decision doesn't just shape how you feel, it shapes the actions you take, the people you influence, the opportunities you notice, and the challenges you're able to solve. Your emotional state is the foundation for everything you build. Try building a skyscraper on shaky ground. Doesn't matter how powerful the blueprint is, the structure won't hold, but build on solid, reinforced ground, and suddenly you can go as high as you're willing to climb. Your state ritual is your reinforced ground. So what does that look like? It begins with changing your physiology. You don't need a gym. You don't need a personal trainer. You don't need an hour. You need intensity, intention, and a willingness to show up for yourself. Even a few seconds of powerful movement can shift your biochemistry. Your breath deepens. Your nervous system recalibrates. Your body releases tension instead of storing it. You're signaling to your brain, I am safe. I am strong. I am in control. And the brain listens. When your physiology shifts, the thoughts that once produced anxiety lose their grip. Your emotional state moves from survival into certainty. From there, you move into your breath. Most people breathe in a way that creates stress, shallow, tight, fast, upper chest breathing. You do that long enough and your brain starts to believe you're in danger even when nothing is happening. Breath is the bridge between your mind and your body. When you breathe with depth and intention, even for a minute, you lower your stress hormones, increase your mental clarity, and create a sense of internal spaciousness where fear can't dominate. Your breath is your internal lever for peace. And then, once the body and breath are aligned, it's time to direct your focus. Because without focus, even the strongest body and calmest breath cannot carry you through the challenges of the day. Focus determines your experience. If you start your morning thinking about what might go wrong, your brain will search for evidence to support that story. But if you start your morning directing your mind toward what you're grateful for, what you're excited about, what you're committed to creating, then your brain becomes your greatest ally instead of your greatest threat. This is why your ritual matters. Not because it's a routine, but because it's a recalibration, a conscious choice to decide how you will show up long before the world decides for you. And the beauty is, it doesn't have to be long to be life-changing. 2 to 3 minutes can completely shift your emotional chemistry. That's the power of an intentional practice. Imagine someone waking up each day and immediately engaging their body with purposeful movement, breathing deeply into their strength and focusing their mind on what truly matters. Over time, fear has less space to grow. Anxiety loses momentum. The ritual becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes a habit. The habit becomes a new identity. This is how real, lasting change happens. Not by waiting for courage to show up, but by training your emotional state until courage becomes your normal. And here's what's even more powerful. Consistency beats intensity every single time. You don't need to sprint a marathon every morning. You don't need to meditate for an hour. You don't need to journal 5 pages. You just need to commit to showing up for yourself with absolute certainty for a few minutes. The repetition creates the transformation. The brain loves patterns. If you give it the same empowering pattern every day, eventually it becomes automatic. And when your emotional state is automatic in your favor, fear doesn't stand a chance. This ritual becomes your anchor. On the days when life gets heavy, it grounds you. On the days when fear tries to hijack your mind, it interrupts the pattern. On the days when anxiety tries to rise, it reminds you who's in charge. You're no longer reacting to the world, you're creating your world from the inside out. This is the ultimate advantage. And yes, there will be days when you don't feel like doing it, days when you're tired or stressed or overwhelmed. But those are the days when the ritual matters most. Those are the days that define your emotional mastery. Anyone can feel good when everything is going their way. But the person who can command their state, even in uncertainty, is the person who becomes unstoppable. That's what this practice is really about. Not just shutting down fear and anxiety, but creating a level of internal strength so powerful that fear never again gets to dictate the direction of your life. The truth is simple. Your emotional state determines your destiny. If you can control your state, you can control your decisions. If you control your decisions, you control your life. And that control doesn't come from waiting for the world to calm down. It comes from training your mind and body every single day to meet life with clarity, certainty, and courage. Your ritual is the doorway to that mastery. It's the moment you declare, I am stronger than my fear. I am larger than my anxiety. I decide how I show up today. And once you fully commit to that daily practice, something extraordinary happens. Fear no longer leads. Anxiety no longer whispers. The chaos of the world no longer pulls you off center. You become grounded, powerful, intentional, and that version of you is unstoppable. And it all begins the moment you take control of your state. Because when you master your state, you master your life.